Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sales Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Daniel McComber, and with me today is Alec Burbage.
What's up, dude?
Real estate investor, house flipper, everything.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah. Welcome on. I'm excited to have you.
Thanks, bro. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, man. Well, me and you, obviously, we become really great friends over the past few months, and then recently did an investment together, which has been awesome.
Yeah.
But it's funny, too, because we knew each other years ago, right? And at UVU lacrosse.
Yeah, dude.
What a long way we've come since then.
I know, dude. I remember seeing you. I think the first time I saw you was in Moab.
Yeah.
That was so funny. I was like, oh, what's up, dude? Long time no see.
Well, it's funny too, because it's really easy to I don't know, I guess for me to notice you. You just, everything about you is just like, I don't know
if that's good or bad, but
I just like, you walk into a room, I'm like, that's Alec. I can't confuse with anybody else, I guess. But it's just fun. I'm like, oh, that's Alec. That's sick. And so it's funny, we played on a team just for 1 year, right?
Yeah.
Because you had a concussion and you had to leave. And then I got married and doing colleges across and being married is hard enough. And then whatever, sales on top of that. And then I also transferred to BYU.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess, and we've talked about this a bunch, but just so people kind of know, I mean, you finished playing lacrosse, right? Your family's a very big lacrosse family, of course, in Utah. And, I'm sure you probably weren't planning on ending lacrosse right then. And so since then, what happened after that? How did you get to here?
Yeah. So I got that concussion, which was my 10th concussion. And jeez. I was not, mentally, I was not doing well. My short-term memory was shot. My long-term memory was shot. And cognitively was not doing great. So I had met my wife, my now wife, a little bit before that. And we had been dating. And after I got that concussion, I couldn't play anymore. UVU wouldn't let me play anymore. And I had to go to a neurologist out in Lehigh, and was doing a bunch for 7 or 8 months. I did electroshock therapy, a bunch of different types of therapy, took a bunch of pills and stuff. And I remember they were like, they were testing my cognitive function. They're like, you're at 90-ish% of where you were before. And I was like, all right, that's good enough. This is expensive. I'll just live life at 90%, man.
Of my capacity. Of my capability. I'm cool
with that.
That's crazy, dude. Yeah. Well, I was there when you got hit too. Yeah. It was big, dude. I remember it was a big hit. So it doesn't surprise me that it was the one that kind of take you out, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a bummer.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's so crazy to think that, the last I see you, concussion, everything like that, because I didn't even see you after that.
For sure.
And then all of a sudden, fast forward, was 7 years maybe?
7, 8 years, yeah.
7, 8 years. And we see each other at, we both signed up to be a part of the men's coaching group, and we see each other. And the cool thing is that it was a very big catalyst moment in our lives that we kind of came back together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of there with you. We were friendly. I wouldn't say friends, but we were teammates, right?
Yeah.
And I was there kind of when you had this big, huge life change. And then all of a sudden, we now realize how big of a life change we've had since joining this men's group and coaching group too. Neither one of us knew that at the time when we met each other again in Moab. But it's cool that we've kind of been there during those 2 points. So let's kind of cover everything that's happened in between, because you've been busy. You've done a lot of awesome stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about your sales background.
Sure.
You went into sales. Talk a little bit about what kind of a sales job it was.
Yeah, so 2 things. My dad owned a local lacrosse store that I managed.
That's right.
So I did sales there for years, and we would go all over. So we'd go to Vegas and California, kind of all over with a little lacrosse trailer. Mm-hmm. So I did that for a while, and then I jumped over to a company called Lizard Skins, that's here locally. And I managed their lacrosse branch that they had started. Cool. So I did that, was going around doing different shows, kind of similar things, selling to lacrosse storefronts all over the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
So I did that for a few years, and it was a great experience. I was not great at it. I had a really hard time sitting at a desk all day, every day, calling lacrosse stores.
Yeah.
And also, originally, they thought there was like 10 times the lacrosse stores that there actually were. So I think within like a month and a half, I'd called every lacrosse store in the world.
Yeah. It's not that many.
No, it was pretty quick. But
That's
yeah,
crazy.
I loved it. It was great. I just wasn't great at it.
Oh.
So.
Well, I mean, I totally forgot about your dad, who, by the way, was our coach at UVU, right?
Coach,
Shout out to Bray. Well, I forgot that he had that store.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I love talking to people who kind of have like this entrepreneur in the family.
For sure.
So that way we can kind of learn a little bit. I mean, so you weren't really good at the sales per se. You're okay at it. You're realizing, no, this isn't for me. I guess from that experience of seeing your dad and working with your dad and having that entrepreneur in the family, did that help persuade you to choose to do something else?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love sales. I love in-person sales, like face-to-face.
Yeah.
Love sales.
Yeah.
If I'm on a phone call at a desk all day, it's rough.
Yeah.
But I loved working at the shop, talking lacrosse. If I'm selling a product I love, obviously, like anybody else, do a lot better. But yeah, my dad has been a serial entrepreneur ever since I was a little kid. Both of my grandparents were as well. So, I mean, as far as like going the conventional route and going to college and then getting a job and starting my career, that was like never really pushed to me as like something I had to do, which was really nice.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, especially our age, were pushed into a certain career path, and that was never, I was never like scared of entrepreneurship. I'd seen it my entire life, so it was very familiar to me.
That's awesome. So, I mean, when you kind of came to the conclusion of your sales, you're like, oh man, sales, wasn't for you.
Sure.
And so then you're trying to decide what to do. What kind of helped during that time?
Yeah. So I was trying to figure out what to do, and my grandpa and uncle were starting a large real estate development up in Park City.
Cool.
Like right on Jordanelle Reservoir where the new ski resort is going in.
Yeah.
So they were developing a lot of that, and they asked if I wanted to come work there. So I went and worked there and was there for 4 or 5 years. I started in the office and worked my way up, and I eventually got my general contractor's license.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Yeah. At that time, I had 2 kids. So my first 2 kids were born, and I was working like 10 to 12-hour days, and then it's an hour each way. So I never saw my kids except on the weekends.
That's
which was really hard. So the whole time I was up there, I spent a lot of time either in the office or a lot of time in like a machine, so an excavator. And I would listen to real estate podcasts and real estate books. And I was trying to figure out what can I do that will give me enough passive income to where I can just chill on the beach, which isn't realistic, but at the time I was trying to figure out how to do that right.
Oh, so you weren't trying to like change jobs per se or find something. You were like, okay, how can I keep doing what I'm doing, even though it stinks, keep doing what I'm doing to make money, but what can I do with this money so I can eventually leave the job? Yeah,
I had just bought a house. I put a basement apartment in, and so my total monthly payment was like $800 or $1,800 a month. Rented the basement for $1,100.
Nice.
And I was paying like $700 a month.
House hacking.
Yeah, hacking. And that's what like kind of turned the light on for me as far as like real estate goes. And so that's what transitioned me into, okay, I would like to do more with real estate. And both my grandpas had already been doing real estate development and had owned a lot of rental properties. So it was a natural transition from there.
That's awesome. Cool. Yeah. So you were studying podcasts and listening to these different things, and how did you kind of hone down on what you specifically, because that's the thing about real estate is there's so many different avenues. People kind of don't realize like you could pick one avenue of real estate and become an expert in it and know nothing else about like many of the other different avenues of real estate. So I feel like, and I was the same way, by the way, when I was doing door-to-door sales, I was listening to Bigger Pockets podcast.
Yeah.
It's rare that you have someone like on a podcast plugging another podcast, but for all my real estate people out there, if I'm not giving you enough, go to Bigger Pockets.
Yeah.
So I was listening to Bigger Pockets. I even bought like a $300, which at the time was really like, it was my second summer, and that was a lot for me. So I invested $300 into that, and dude, it was tough. I was trying to figure out, I'm like, well, there's the Burr method, there's the flip method, there's so many different things. But I think like you, I was gravitated towards this idea where, hey, I'm making pretty good money, so I don't necessarily need to do something that's like going to replace my job, like make me money.
Yeah.
I was like, I kind of just want to invest in something that can make a little bit of money, and I like that idea for a long period of time. Was that kind of the mentality that you had, or?
I was ready to stop what I was doing and go do real estate full time. I wanted to spend time with my kids. And I wanted to be with my family. And I was ready for a change. I had been working with my brothers, cousins, uncles, and it was awesome. It was so much fun while I was there, but there was a ceiling. I wasn't able to grow past a certain point. Yeah. And so I ended there, and I found a job ad on KSL that was looking for a project manager for a wholesaling company in Salt Lake that wholesales real estate.
Nice.
And so I went and worked there, and that was kind of my entry. And I wasn't making very much money at all. Yeah. So I was wholesaling deals on the side, and that's kind of how I got into it.
Is that a conflict of interest there?
They did not like that.
Did they find out later?
No, they were cool with it at the time. It was interesting because they had like, we had a set split as a company. Yeah. And it was a totally fair split, but I started doing a lot of deals on my own on the side. Yeah. And I think I was carving out like quite a bit of deals that they could be doing as well. Yeah, that makes sense. So they came back with a horrible split and changed it. And I quit that day. I was like, I'm just going to go do this on my own.
Well, that's crazy. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different ways to get wholesaling, leads, I suppose, or so I guess you're getting them from different places than the company was.
Yeah, I was getting them from the same, like anything that was on market, and then also different as well. So something that I've gotten extremely good at, even when I was in high school, I was buying and selling weird stuff, cars, boats, I had a sailboat, weird stuff. Yeah. And so that transitioned into real estate, finding deals in weird places. So I would look on like Craigslist, which isn't used in Utah very often. Yeah. For deals, or Facebook Marketplace, KSL. For sale by owners, I'd go knock doors. And then I would also find stuff on market, negotiate, and put stuff under contract, and then sell the contracts. So
dang. So, but you're putting on a lot of volume compared to this like company, right?
Yeah. For one person, I was managing their remodels. I was the general contractor, so I wasn't even supposed to be doing the sales portion or the wholesale portion.
That makes sense.
I was just doing that on the side because I wasn't making like hardly any money doing that. Mm-hmm. I remember I did one deal and made $5,000, and that was like what I would make in like 2 months at the time. And I was freaking out. Yeah. And as soon as I figured out I could do a couple of those a month, I left immediately. So,
man, that's amazing. So it's really cool. What I like about your story is that you put yourself in the places to learn.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. And so I feel like a lot of people don't do that. They don't realize that, hey, if you're humble enough to put yourself in a place where you're not making a lot of money, and you take all the advantages that you can, then you can learn, right? Like even with your family. Right. Sure. People might say, oh, well, like your family was already in real estate, so you went and worked for them and they took you under your wing. Well, it's like, no, like you could still choose to do other things. And it doesn't sound like you're doing easy work, like office and being in, and office work can be easy for some people, but for me and you, it's not. Rough. And then also being like in a backhoe, for example. So like, you're doing hard stuff, you're learning, you're doing things on your own. But what I like is that everywhere you went, it sounds like you're learning the entire time.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So, I mean, how much like, I guess, kind of learning and education do you think you put into the point where you finally were like, I could do this on my own?
I was there for like very little of what I was doing with my family translated to flipping homes. I thought more of it would. Not very much of it did. And when I switched over, I think just in general, anytime I've made a jump, which has been several times since then, into like new types of businesses or real estate, anytime I'm talking to anybody, they seem to feel like the barrier of entry into any type of new thing is larger than it is. And for whatever reason, that holds a lot of people back. Something's broken in my mind where I don't see barriers of entry. I just see green lights, and it's gotten me in a lot of trouble. But it's also helped me a ton. So I think just taking action before you have all of the pieces is really what has been my superpower, is being able to jump out of the airplane, build a parachute on the way down, and just know like it's all good. I'm going to figure it out. I've done it so many times now that I have the confidence that like I'm going to figure it out, whatever it is. Yeah.
It gets to the point where your experience becomes the education that you needed, to the point where you're just so confident that you can't fail pretty much. Well, during that time, I mean, that's a pretty crazy thing. We kind of make it sound like it's simple, but like going out on your own sounds pretty wild, right? Now, this is the part I like to focus on the most, is because a lot of the people who are listening, a lot of people who want to do what you do, they just simply lack the dedication to take that first step.
Yeah.
And so I guess you had your boots on the ground at that company. You're in charge of it. So you kind of saw firsthand what it takes to rehab and to flip a home, right?
Yeah.
So you had that good knowledge, but what gave you the confidence? I mean, again, you're wholesaling deals, but what gave you the confidence to go all in on your own?
I didn't have another choice. So the backstory to this is, at the same time I had left my family's company, I had just had a newborn. And I had just bought a house, and I had pretty much no savings. So this is another pattern in my life, is I jump when I feel like I need to jump, not when it's convenient. And I almost always have my back against the wall. Like, I very rarely plan this out with like, oh, I'm going to have like a year of savings and then I'm going to go do this thing. I'm like, nah, I just feel like I need to do it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And for better or for worse, it's caused my family a lot of stress too. But so I didn't have any money. Like, I had to go do that.
Yeah, that's cool. So out of necessity, you were kind of like, I'm going to just bet on myself. I'm going to go make it happen.
Yeah.
I love that. So you start your kind of own thing. At least from what I could tell, like, you didn't like get an LLC and get incorporated with a fancy name and a logo and stuff like that.
No,
Maybe some of those things.
No, I still don't have like branding or swag or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, I was cracking up after, when we met back in Moab, I was asking what you did, and like, oh, I'm a real estate investor. I'm like, okay, cool. What do you do for money? Like, oh, well, actually, like, that is my job.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But then you kept telling me what you do. I'm like, no, dude, you're not you are a real estate investor. Don't get me wrong, but you're like, you're the owner of a real estate company, pretty much. Like, yeah, you might be the company, but you do so many different things, and you hire so many different people, and you bring so many people on, subcontractors, you can call them.
Sure.
But I mean, you're running a full-on organization over there.
Yeah.
I know it's taken a while to kind of get to the point you are now. How difficult were those first kind of beginning stages, and maybe what were some of the first beginning steps that you took that helped you the most?
Yeah, I'll talk about the business side, and I'll also talk about like the personal life side, because I don't hear a ton of like the personal life side. We made a lot of sacrifices. We sold our home and pulled all of our equity out to flip our first house. I have heard this a lot, like, who you marry determines like how much you can actually take on as an entrepreneur and what you can actually do.
Yeah.
That is true. My wife has been, we moved into a storage park triplex, and she worked there so we could live for free. We sold our car. We had one car, like beat up old Honda Civic. It was tight. It was hard for a long time. And I will give her a lot of the credit, because we ate it for a long time before we made very much money. So I'm extremely grateful for her for doing that. But I do see a lot of people get into the entrepreneurial space and they want to be like flashy and swaggy and buy the nice car and do all the nice things when they get a little bit of money. Yeah. I'm like, dude, don't do that.
The money's not guaranteed, right?
No. So I flipped my first house, and this was right during the run up of the real estate market.
Back in like 2019?
Yeah, right around there.
Yeah.
Yep. And I found this house from one of my buddies who was a real estate agent, ran my numbers. My brother and I bought it, and we flipped it, and we thought we were going to make like $30,000. And the market took off in like the 3-month period that we owned it. Yeah. And we cleared like 120,000, which for us was like, dude, that was crazy. Because I was making like 50,000 with my previous job, and that was so crazy. I was like, dude, if we could do a few of these a year, that'd be nuts. Right. So we just started buying and buying and buying, and then we had 4 or 5 flips going at the same time, and we're doing a lot. And then we flipped a hotel, which was a pretty crazy story. So
I mean, at the beginning, you're buying and buying and buying. Well, it's one thing to buy it, but it's another thing because you weren't wholesaling, you were flipping, right?
I was doing everything.
Yeah. So talk me through that. That's the biggest thing that I've been intrigued with you, bro, is literally just like everything. Like I said, it's tough to master one thing and get good at it to make money, let alone multiple, right? So at that time, take me through. You their first one was a flip. Yep. After that, what did you do?
Flipped a hotel.
That was
my second one we did.
Okay. I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
And then what's the next thing?
Probably another house. I don't even remember.
We
were flipping a lot of stuff at the same time. So I had a lot of different flips going. I was wholesaling properties.
That's what I was curious, like the wholesaling. So then you wholesaled one.
Yeah.
Okay. Or 2 or 3.
I was wholesaling first, and then I bought my first flip. Excuse me.
Right.
So.
And then I guess was it mainly just wholesaling and flipping, or did you do any other kind of like?
I didn't own any rentals. I was mostly just wholesaling and flipping of everything that I could get my hands on at the time. So
let's talk about this hotel idea. Because like you said earlier, you're the kind of guy that just will take action and then figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
There's no way that like you knew what the rules and regulations were for flipping a hotel. So walk me through. House comes on the property, and then what? You just see it on the MLS, or?
So this was another wholesaler that's in our men's group actually.
Oh.
Yeah. And he had sent out, this was his first deal ever. He had sent out this hotel and a triplex. They were a package deal, and they were in Springville. And one was built in, so the hotel was built in the 1890s. So it was freaking old. Beautiful hotel. So cool. Okay. Historic registry, which I didn't know anything about at the time either. Yeah. And then the triplex, which was one of the worst properties I flipped. It was really, really bad. Roof was shot. Water damage everywhere. Dang. It was bad. Yeah. So we bought those. It was really hard, like knowing what it was going to sell for at the end, or how much it was going to make if we ran it, what our rehab budget was going to be. We did a bunch of work ourselves and contracted everything, obviously. And
it's crazy too, because you can't rely on it was your second deal.
Yeah.
And Blaine's. Is it Blaine or?
Who's that? Oh, that wholesale did to us?
Yeah.
No, it was Sione. But Blaine and Sione partnered later on.
Oh, okay, cool. So
yeah.
I might cut a little bit, but so it was the other guy's first
wholesale deal.
Wholesale ever. So you guys are, hey, I got this property I just got, and then you're like, I've done it once before. Let's just go in on it. A hotel.
Nobody would give us lending on it. It was really hard to get lending. Yeah. These two brothers that live up north, they took a shot on us and liked my brother and I. Oh. My brother had been underwriting hotels for the fund that he was working for before he came and worked with me.
Okay.
So he had like some rough idea there.
So he knew the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not just buying a hotel hoping that it'll flip. Like he ran the numbers on it, did the due diligence on it. Cool. So I kind of I compare myself to that story too, because when I bought my first duplex, the first property I ever bought was a duplex. Yeah. Right. I was in Texas, and I've been studying for a long time. Like, okay, I want to flip, and if I did, pretty much the number that always ran, like, if I could get at least $100 to $200 per door, is what they say, then you're doing good.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. So I was looking forever, and the market was so hot that what happened was this one finally came on the market. The listing agent forgot to post it on the MLS.
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, not listing agent. Well, it is a listing agent, but it was, remember Homey?
Yeah. Oh, man.
Dude. So they sold it through Homey.
Yeah.
And the Homey person only posted on Homey and Zillow.
Yeah.
They forgot to put on the MLS. So my wife was literally on a plane about to fly back to Texas from wherever she was.
Yeah.
And right before that, she turned on airplane mode. She saw it pop up on the market.
No
she texted it to me like, hey, check this one out. I'm not kidding. Like a minute later, lost service. I get the text. I'm like, what the heck? I start calling. Sure enough, I was like, I don't see this on the MLS. I don't see anything.
Yeah.
Sure enough, we put an offer in on it. And because there were so few offers, they were afraid that like maybe no one wanted it. And they took our offer within like 24 hours or something like that.
Way.
Yeah. They did find out before they accepted it that it wasn't on the MLS. So they waited a couple more hours. I was where they were going to wait like a couple days or weeks. They just took it, dude. I couldn't believe it. So it's funny how the point I want to make with that is, dude, I didn't know it was sight unseen. I never seen it. I had a family relative go over and check it out and like FaceTime me while I was on the doors. I was like in the middle of a street FaceTiming, looking at property I was potentially going to buy. And the crazy thing is that it didn't look good. It did, like, I'm like, this does not look good. It had not been remodeled. One side was kind of remodeled. The other side was still from the 70s, like hadn't been touched. I'm like, holy crap, it doesn't look that good. But I kept looking at my numbers, dude. I was like, but the numbers work. And the market's hot. Like, I wasn't trying to flip it. I was trying to keep it, right?
Yeah.
I was like, the market's hot. I'm sure it'll increase in value. Worst case scenario, I could probably sell it.
Yeah.
And, you know, not lose money.
Yeah.
That was kind of my idea. I was like, worst case scenario, I could sell it and not lose money. I could just get my money back. And, I ended up keeping it for 2 years, selling it, making $280,000 or something like that on it. And it's crazy. You know, I say that I hit the Utah lottery. Yeah. Right. I didn't know it was going to do that well. But when I saw it was $360,000, it's still, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. But then when I sold it for 280 or I'm sorry, 680 or something like that.
Yeah.
I still couldn't believe someone was buying it then.
Yeah.
But now, a couple years later, I'm like, makes sense.
Yep.
It's the best part of freaking Provo. So it's interesting how me and you are kind of the same, where we're like, hey, the numbers made sense.
Jump on it.
Let's just jump on it, right? So how numbers made sense on this whole hotel idea, and you're like, okay, just jump on it. I'm sure during the process of flipping a hotel, there's many instances where you're like, what the freak are we doing? Are there any that stand out to you?
Oh, yeah, dude. Well, yeah, the whole thing. I'm like, I have no idea. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. Like, I had flipped some homes, but everything I was doing before that was mainly like dirt work before new construction. So I didn't have that much experience. And then flipping an 1890s historic hotel, like we were just making stuff up on the fly. We got red tagged. I didn't know we needed permits, dude. Like, that's crazy. I was an idiot. I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. So we like pull permits and like finally get to the end of it. And, we didn't know like where to list it. There was no comparable sales in the area. We list it, and we listed the triplex at the same time. Originally, we were thinking we were going to make like 250, 300 grand, and we were stoked.
For both of them.
Yeah, for both combined. Yeah. And we were just under $1 million for both. We cleared.
Dang.
It was the best deal I've ever done. It was great.
Well, it sounds like it was really good timing too in the market, good timing. Right?
Yep.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of people got to understand. Timing does matter. It really does. Like, especially when you're getting started.
Yeah.
When you're an expert, you can make timing work to your advantage. You can kind of foresee things, and you can also like make deals happen even if the timing isn't great. Like for the past year, for example, people have been making lots of money even though it's not like a fantastic market, right? And so when you're getting started out, people always like, well, how do you know when it's the right timing? You don't.
No.
You don't. What I think my advice when people ask me is I tell them, like, as long as it's not like bad timing, it's good timing. Yeah. There's not okay timing, in my opinion, with real estate. Like, when it's bad. It's like, dude, recession. Okay, bad timing. Like, well, good and bad timing, I suppose, depending on what kind
perspective,
of
right?
Perspective. What kind of investing you're doing. I think what I tell a lot of people, I'm like, the timing depends on you and your personal situation.
Yeah.
Because worst case scenario, you could sit on a deal for 20, 25 years. Eventually, you're probably going to make money on it. And so, like, if your timing is that you're trying to sell it within a year and it turns out you can't sell it within a year and now you're broke, bad timing. So that's at least the advice I give people. What advice do you give to people kind of based from your experience on getting started?
Yeah, you can make money in any market, and you can lose money in any market. If I was starting over, some of the things that I wish I would have known about timing is you don't take short-term risks in bad markets. So I don't buy flips in bad markets, or I won't anymore. Lost a lot of money doing that. Lost a lot of money doing that. Yeah. And then I don't buy long-term assets for the most part during really hot markets. And I try to time it to where I can make a bunch of money while things are hot, and then buy a bunch of stuff while things are low. And by no means have I been perfect at that. And I've only been through one cycle personally. So I'm excited for the next cycles now that I got my butt kicked in the first cycle, learned a bunch. Now I can go and actually execute on somewhat of a game plan in the future. But I especially like getting started. If you're wanting to get into real estate, I would say a great place to start if you like want to do it full time is either as an agent or wholesaling properties, getting your feet wet that way. Flipping can be really hard. I can't tell you how many of my friends have started flipping homes when they didn't have another source of income and have lost the home, lost their personal home, lost their car, and go bankrupt or just take a really hard hit. So granted, that's not what I did. I did not play it safe, and it worked out for me. But in an ideal, perfect world, that's what I would do.
Well, kind of more on what you were just saying, like the downfalls that can come from this, and then also kind of going back to your experience that happened. So Flip the Hotel is amazing, and then you went for a year or two or something like that, like flipping and doing different deals. What kind of, you mentioned that you had this really hard time. What kind of triggered that, if you're okay with going there? What kind of triggered that, and what are some lessons that we can learn from this example that you had?
Yeah, so we had just started, we had purchased 2 houses. We wanted to get into the higher end luxury market. You can make a ton of money. You can lose a ton of money. And I love flipping homes. I like taking something that's ugly and turning it into something beautiful. Besides the money, besides the business, I love creating something out of nothing or renovating. I really like that. So the high end stuff versus a 2-bed 1-bath that is going to be very generic, same thing every single time. I like doing the higher end stuff. So we had just purchased a cabin up Immigration Canyon. That was a fairly big risk. And then we had with a partner, and then we had purchased another property. It was like, I think it was just under 6,000 square feet up on the bench in Sandy.
Wow.
And those were both going to be over $1 million sale prices, which was a lot at the time.
So real quick, you said it was a little risky for the first one. What was were the margins just really small?
It was a cabin. I'd never flipped a cabin before. And it's secondary, like anything that's somebody's secondary home. If the market turns, second homes are going first.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you're not selling that owner occupied, which is hard. Same thing with luxury. Like there's this price point in luxury where people always move down in price point when the market turns. So if they're buying at $1 million, they're going to go to $750.
So I guess what at that point, what made you want to take those risks?
Dude, I'm always taking risks. I'm addicted to taking risks. I think anybody who is like a serial entrepreneur is addicted to taking risks.
Oh, okay.
For the most part. When you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just you're
too.
constantly, I don't know. It's like, it's almost like a dopamine hit. It's like you're constantly, I get excited even just thinking, and I don't want to say fantasizing, but just thinking about, like, I see an opportunity or I'll see a problem, like, oh man, that'd be so, you could do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And sometimes my imagination takes me a little too far to the point where I'm like starting to take action because of it. Same thing with real estate. Another thing with me too that gets me in such big trouble is now this is going to sound really cocky, but I'll have too much money just saved away sitting there doing nothing, or making a very boring 5.5% to 8% in the market.
Like high yield,
Yeah, which I've learned boring is usually better.
Yep.
You'll have these amazing wins that we hear about, hotels and duplexes that we're selling. But the thing is, and I know this is a lesson you learned, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but the boring is good, right? It is, you need that. You need the 1,200 2-bed, 1-bath properties and stuff like that. But anyway, so those are the two things: risk taking, and also the boring and mundane just drives me crazy. It kind of pushes me towards wanting to take risks some more.
Sure.
So you saw the opportunity come up, and I guess in your head were you just kind of calculating like, man, the risks are high, but were you just kind of, again, banking on your confidence to be able to make it work?
Yeah, it's all calculated, but at the end of the day, it's risk. So when you're underwriting anything, you're going to get to the point where there's unknowns, and you kind of have to step into the darkness, take the risk, and then find out what those unknowns are.
Yeah.
And sometimes they are not that big of a deal. Most of the time, I would say they're not that big of a deal. Okay. And you're like, oh, okay, I actually covered most of my bases while I was underwriting these properties. When you get into the weird properties, like cabins that are on septic systems or that type of thing, have weird setbacks. HOAs sometimes make things complicated.
Yeah.
Those can be big unknowns and big hurts. So that one specifically ended up being we hired a contractor. I had a partner who was doing the general contracting. I was the money partner.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't checking in on it as closely as I should have. They framed most of the interior of the house incorrectly, took out a lot of the load-bearing walls, and it ended up being a teardown. Since it was a teardown,
oh my goodness.
It was a mess.
That's crazy. Keep going. I'm curious.
It just triggered a lot of other things. We had to move the septic system. We ended up just listing it, and we sold it at like a $350,000 loss.
So you just sold the land pretty much.
Yeah, we sold the cabin to if somebody could come in and figure out something else to do with it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sold it at a massive loss.
Yeah.
And that one sucked. And then we had that other one in Sandy that we sold for about $150,000 loss.
Wow.
And then we had another property. All in all, but in like a 6-month period, we lost probably just over $1 million cash out of our pockets.
Wow, that's crazy.
Really stung. Really hurt.
Yeah,
it was a big setback.
Did you have any wins during that? Like they're kind of helping you?
No,
it was just
killed.
Boom,
bleeding.
Boom.
Yeah, and the market. That was when the market was like horrific.
Down.
Yeah, nobody was buying. Everybody was
interest rates were going up. And it was making it harder and harder to sell properties.
Yeah. And at the end of that, I did kind of see that coming. I thought that I didn't think it was going to happen as quickly as it did.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody was talking about it at the time. So I had started studying creative finance. So seller finance, subject to all of that about a year prior to that.
Good.
In anticipation for this market crashing. I was anticipating that I would have a large war chest of money that I could go buy up a bunch of single family homes, rentals, duplexes, and lost all of that. But I brought in a bunch of partners and we started buying seller finance subject to deals and bought, 40, 50 doors in a period of like 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
All seller finance, all subject to, all creative finance.
Yeah.
And that was great.
Were you wholesaling those?
Just keeping them.
Oh, you just keeping them?
I wholesaled some of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
but mostly kept them. And I don't know very many other people that were doing it at the time. Everybody was so scared of buying that it felt like at the time it was just like I could take my pick of the litter as far as what was up for sale.
Okay. So it's crazy. You're almost kind of like doubling down, right?
Yeah.
Like you go through a really bad 6-7 month where you're just like losing. Like, okay, cool. So did you lose all the properties were gone? Or at a loss, I should say.
Our flips, yeah.
The flips, yeah.
Yeah, our flips got killed.
Yeah, and so then you're like, okay, cool. Like no more flips anymore, obviously.
Yeah.
And then you pivot, right?
Yeah.
And good entrepreneurs know how to pivot like that. And it's awesome that you were educating yourself before then.
Yeah.
So you start going into it. I mean, it's still quite a bit of risk associated with sub twos and everything like that. And I guess you also have to go and it requires a lot of sales to do that, doesn't it? You have to like get people to do that, the homeowners to do that with you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell me how that kind of, what lessons did you learn during that period where you're like, okay, I'm pivoting completely to something new and I got to rely just on myself. Like what did you learn from that period?
Yeah, you and I were talking a minute ago about risk and boring investments, and I do have kind of a weird opinion on this, and this is for me personally, maybe not for other people, but I don't mind losing. Like that is probably another one of my superpowers is I'm okay losing. Like, and I've gotten to the point now where I just believe it's part of my journey. I'm like, yeah, I had to take that loss. So I learned this lesson so that I could make this decision that would create this win, which was way bigger than the initial loss that took place. As I stack these losses, I'm starting to enjoy them more and really analyze and look at them and figure out, okay, what lesson was I supposed to learn here? Like, where did I mess up? And how can I correct it? And then what opportunity came from it? Yeah. And then moving on from there. So a lot of the lessons that came from it were being very careful about partnerships, being very careful about not being the active partner. So I don't do any partnerships now unless I'm the active partner. Probably because that's one of my weaknesses is underwriting other people, and I just love everyone. I'm like, yeah, you seem like a cool guy. I'm sure you're killing it, you know?
Yeah.
Here's some money. Go do your thing, bro. And then they steal my money or whatever. So, but yeah, just being careful about partnerships, betting on me, number one, and then investing in me. I mean, after all of that went down, that's when I joined our men's group.
Yeah.
I knew I needed to change, and I knew I needed to invest in myself rather than other companies or flips or other people or whatever. And that has been the number one thing that has changed my life is taking that money that I initially would have invested in crypto or whatever else and investing in myself.
Man, that's awesome. And so you've been doing this for a while now, and I guess I'm sure when you're at that bottom, you're calculating how much, you lost and how much you need to get back and stuff like that. Were you able like with this new kind of with wholesaling and this new kind of investment strategy, were you able to come back up pretty quickly, or were you surprised with the bounce back?
No, it was pretty slow. I mean, still working on bouncing back. Definitely. I mean, this was fairly recent. This was about a year ago. So still working on getting back to where I was before, but I mean, real estate is, like I said, you can make money anywhere. So we did make a lot of money wholesaling during that hard period. And now we're buying flips again and doing well. We just did the flip with you, actually.
Yeah.
And we're closing in 2 weeks. So that'll be a good payday as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, trying to buy as much as we can right now.
Okay. Well, something I've learned through the deal that we did together, and then there's so many different real estate people who I've been connecting with recently that have been opening my eyes to a lot of different things, is that the network really matters.
For sure.
Your network extremely matters. And it's not just real estate investors and so forth, but it's also contractors and everything. And so, like, I had never thought that myself could be, I could give a bridge loan for somebody, or I could be a hard money lender for another person. And it's the same thing. I didn't know I could invest in businesses until I did it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why I didn't think that I could do the same thing with real estate. But, you know, we met, and then you just opened up my eyes like, yeah, dude, I mean, if you have money sitting there, why don't you invest it? And I love that idea. And so the funny thing is that I was a part of a flip, like you say, for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
At the very tail end, had nothing to do with the flip itself, and didn't even see. I think actually I asked you for a picture. I'm pretty sure I committed I was going to do it, and then I was like, right before I wired the money, I was like, hey, send me a picture of that property real quick.
Is this a real house?
Yeah, I think you sent me like, here, dude, I'll send you more later, and you sent me like one of like the inside. I'm like, it didn't justify anything. I was like, all right, whatever, and I sent the money anyways. Yeah. But that's the idea, is like your network will show you how you can expand your net worth. And it's crazy because it's opened my eyes in so many different ways I had never seen before, right? And I'm sure like through you, the relationships that you've built with the different people, it's helped you also kind of get to this point where you're trying new things.
For sure. Yeah, and I wish I was better at that at the beginning. The first couple of years that I was doing it, I didn't know very many people at all. And it was just me and my brother, and we knew a few agents, and that was pretty much it. But as of late, I've spent a lot of time meeting new agents, taking people to lunch, and it has changed everything for me as far as like being able to take deals to people that have more experience than me and saying, hey, what do you think about this deal? I guarantee I would have saved myself a lot of heartache had I taken on mentors or people in the community or whatever. I mean, that's like the whole reason for our men's group, and just in general, like all those types of masterminds, they will save you a lot of time and a lot of money if you find the right ones. So,
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you're also doing something, kind of wrap up here, but you're doing something really interesting where, you know, you post on social media quite a bit, just very openly and honestly about different deals you have and the money that you could, that people can invest with you.
Yeah.
Right. Which you don't see that too often. I don't know if you know that, but I don't see that too often.
I've had so many people tell me that. I didn't know. I don't know if I shouldn't be doing it or not, but I do it. I just started using social media like early on. I was posting my deals that I was finding, and I had a lot of like flippers and other investors start to follow me. So I'm like, I'm just going to post on my Instagram and see if anybody like wants to buy this deal. And then someone bought the deal, and I was like, dang, that was cool.
It worked.
I'm going to try to raise some money. Yeah. So, hey, I need 30 grand for this flip, and someone gave me money, and I was like, dang. And now almost like most of the deals that I wholesale, I move through just on my Instagram account, just to like friends, family, whoever. Yeah. And then actually, I think all of the money that I raise for our deals is just on Instagram. But I've had multiple people tell me that, like, that's weird. I've never seen anybody do that. I'm going to start trying it. And I've seen a lot of people start to do it here locally. I doubt I was the first, but
it's what it shows though is that you're not it's not all talk. Like you're doing it. Like it's really cool to see it, and because you have so many people that talk about the investments they're doing, and and you know, you wonder what if they're doing one right now or if they're just trying to find one. And I feel like there's just they're not like being vulnerable either about like wanting to find a deal. Yeah. They feel like they have to like say that they have one or something like that. And so for you just to be like the other day, like, hey, if anyone's got any flips, let me know. Like it sounds simple, but when you're putting that out there to like thousands of people, that makes a difference. Sure. And so you're doing both. You're like, hey, if anyone has a deal, I'll take it. Yeah. But you're also doing work to find them on your own, of course. Sure. And once you find them, you're also like, hey, what I like is the inclusivity of it. Is that you're not excluding anybody. You're literally saying, hey, if anyone wants to invest, you can. Now, I'm sure maybe in case someone's listening to this, that I'm sure you vet them to make sure that they are qualified investors or whatnot. Yeah, for sure. And you'd never let someone invest with you that you didn't like or, know.
Yeah, and we make sure. I mean, I go through. There's a lot of people that I either don't respond to because I don't know, or I'll talk with them and say, "Hey, this isn't a good option for you."
Yeah.
Beforehand, and then everything we do is asset backed, and it's all recorded against the property and done legally and everything.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
But to your point, there are a lot of people. I mean, in every industry, and especially door to door, that will talk about the volume that they're doing, and there's this weird lack of transparency where something's off and you're like, what's going on? I don't know. Something's off there. I don't think. And sure enough, I mean, they're not doing what they say they're doing. But at the beginning, I'm sure I did that too, where I was like, fake it till you make it kind of attitude. And now I would rather just ask for help and tell people, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea, dude.
Well, I've heard that can be like, that's kind of what I did. Yeah. For me, like I leaned on a real estate investor who she showed me so much. Yeah. And it's because I told her, I'm like, I'm not just here to like say I want to invest, but not actually invest. I'm like, I showed her, I didn't show her a bank account or anything, but somehow I really got the point across to her. I was like, I am dead serious. I have the money saved up. Yeah. I'm trying to invest right now, and I need more knowledge. And she saw that as a sign of strength and took me under her wing and taught me a lot. And it was really kind of what helped me. So
when you're recruiting people, for example, if you're talking to someone who is just will not let you talk, is telling you how much they know and how much they've done, dude, those conversations are exhausting. And you leave that conversation, you're like, dude, I do not want that guy on the team. I don't want to do business with that guy. Yeah. Versus someone like Ed Milet, who, you remember that story where they were talking about, he was like, that guy was the nicest guy. They go to dinner and Ed Milet's asking a bunch of questions to this guy. And he was like, I love that guy. What was that guy's name? And he had no idea like what he did, what his name was, but he loved him. And
it's because Ed was asking him questions about himself. Right. And then a lot of times what Ed does to add to that too is he will tell people about themselves. Yeah. Right. That's his phrase that he always says. Let me tell you about you. Yeah. Well, you can only do that if you ask a bunch of questions about it. Right. For sure. And it's the same thing in the industry too. Like you can't help anyone or receive help if you're talking so much. Like it sounds weird that you can't help someone if you're the one talking the entire time, but you have to ask questions. You have to get to know them. Yep. And so if you're talking the entire time, you can't be helped and you can't help anybody anyways.
Yeah. And to that point, if you're trying to get into real estate, I mean, dude, the top dogs are really freaking busy and they're not necessarily looking to take on people to mentor. But if you can go about it the right way and say, hey, I'd love to take you to lunch. Is there some time I could take you to lunch, or is there something I can help you out with or whatever? If somebody offers to take me to lunch and they are asking me questions and really want to learn, I will absolutely help them. But there is that like barrier of entry where you have to get past that. You have to get through the door, and then there's a ton of people that are willing to help you.
Get creative. And the funny thing too is everyone, like if you work your network, someone knows someone that will be willing to take a lunch with you. You might not get the Instagram influencer that has thousands and thousands of followers to take a lunch with you. But that's the funny thing is you don't have thousands and thousands of followers. No. And that's why I kind of wanted you on. Like you're doing really good for yourself and for your family, and you know what you're doing. Yep. And you don't have to have this massive social media following in order to use social media to your benefit as well. Yep. And so that's the crazy thing is like, man, people need to open their eyes. I tweeted this. I don't know what you call it now that it's X, but I X'd this, whatever. It. Yeah. Stupid. I said there are many, many people online, on Instagram, on social media that make a lot of money. There are more people outside of social media that make even more money.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a couple people comment. They're like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, do you mean that people who are on social media aren't like, making good money, or they're not relevant? I'm like, no, that's missing the point. Yeah. There are more people that make more money off social media than there are that are on it. Yep. Believe it or not. Maybe I should check that statistic, but in the world, it's got to be true.
For sure.
Maybe not in America. I don't know.
No,
but the point is you literally can work your network, and someone again, you don't know how much money people make.
Yeah.
I mean, me and you had a close friend in our men's group, and for the first week I knew him, I didn't know how much money he made. Then it turns out, you know who I'm talking about now. Sure. Turns out he's a freaking multimillionaire. I'm like, well, I liked you before. No.
For sure.
But I'm like, that's the thing, is that you can talk to somebody who's not flashy, not sexy, not crazy out there, that's making great money, that knows really what they're talking about, that will lend you their time if you have the right intentions. And frankly, it's helpful if you have some money to invest as well. You're at that point where you can invest.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And as you are picking a mentor, I do think, like you said, that is something that's really important, is finding the avatar that you want. Like, what do you want your life to be like? Mm-hmm. And getting really serious about that, and then finding someone who is where you're at and getting in with them.
Yeah.
Like, there are people that have way more flips than I do, way more money than I do, and I want nothing to do with their life.
Yeah.
And their life is amazing for them.
Yeah.
I want something completely different. And I made the mistake of looking at what I thought success looked like and chasing that for a long time, where it was like the big house, the fast cars, like all of this stuff. And now that I've gotten to this point, I could care less about a lot of the things that I really wanted when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And I want to spend a lot less time working, and I want to spend a lot more time with my kids, and traveling and doing other things. So I am very careful about my time, and I mean, I put an emphasis on different things now than I used to.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Well, honestly, I feel like me and you've had countless conversations about the different things that we're putting our focus on and priorities in right now. And so, yeah, it's just amazing to have you on to talk about, like, hey, you're just a self-made guy. You're a self-made man, and you can teach yourself, you can take action and take risk, and you can get to the point where you can cultivate a career and a business and a lifestyle around these things that you're passionate about. So I'm just really appreciative that you can come on today and share your story, man.
Yeah, dude. Happy to be on here.
Yeah, awesome. And then if anyone wanted to, I guess invest with you or learn from you, what was your Instagram again?
At Alec Flips Houses. ALEC.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
Alec Flips Houses. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I'm excited for our next flip that we do together.
Yeah, dude. Coming up here soon, bro.
That's right. Okay. Thank you, bro.
Thanks, man.